This is Dr. Lindsay, and what I'd like to talk about now is inflation and the Consumer Price Index, known as the CPI. Well, first, inflation. Inflation is a general increase in the price level. So, a general increase in prices. And deflation is just the opposite. It's a general decrease in prices. We don't see deflation very often. We only see inflation. There's only been deflation a couple of times, very short times in the last 80 years. And what I'm going to use throughout this is a symbol for inflation as the symbol pi. Now, if I asked you what the inflation rate is right now in this country, chances are you probably don't know. When I ask hundreds of people what the inflation rate is, generally most people don't know. There may be just a handful that may have an idea of what the inflation is, an idea of generally what the current inflation is. But most people don't know, and their guesses are completely way off. And keep this in mind because this may actually be something important in macroeconomics that we'll cover in a few weeks. The people are unaware, for the most part, of how much prices are going up or down around them. Now let's say that, take an example here, that inflation is 5%. 5% per year. And tennis rackets are going up in price by 5% a year. So we'll say they go up 5% a year. Exactly the amount of inflation. And since prices in general are going up 5% a year, and tennis rackets are going up 5% a year, relative to other prices, they're not really moving up much. They're really not even changing. So relatively to other prices, no change. Now the nominal price, which is the actual dollar amount of the tennis rackets, the nominal price is going up. It is increasing at 5% a year. But if we were to adjust for the general price increase, we would find that the real price, and the real price is the price after adjusting for inflation, is unchanged. Because relative to everything else, it hasn't gone up or hasn't gone down. Now, if all prices went up 5%, everything went up equally 5%, then calculating the inflation would be fairly easy. The problem is some things go up more than 5% and some things go up less than 5%. So it's kind of hard to figure out just what the inflation rate is. For example, healthcare in the U.S. has been going up around 7% a year for the last 30 or 40 years. And meanwhile, the inflation rate over the last 30 or 40 years has been somewhere around 5% a year. So although healthcare is going up more than the average price increase, just a few percent a year, over a long period of time, it gets more and more expensive as far as real prices, because the real prices is going up every year, even after you adjust for inflation. So it's the government's job to figure out what the inflation rate is, and that's done by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And they produce something called the Consumer Price Index, known as the CPI. The Consumer Price Index, abbreviated most commonly as just the CPI, is an index that's created by the Bureau of Labor Statistics to measure inflation. And what they do is they go out and they've had interviews with thousands of people, thousands of family, maybe on the order of 60 or 70,000 interviews to find out what people buy and how much. And they create a basket of goods and services. So we'll say a basket of goods and services. Not literally, but figuratively. And this is a listing of products that they feel consumers purchase, given the interviews of people they've talked to. So this basket is weighted by what people buy. So for example, if a typical consumer spends 20% of their income on transportation, say things like cars, plane rides, and subway trains and subways, then 20% of the CPI basket will be transportation. So if we make a pie chart here of what is in the CPI, well, 20% of it here would be transportation. If that's what the typical consumer spends out of their budget on transportation. And they go out and first they make this basket of things that consumers buy, weighted by how much they buy, how much of their income they spend on things. And they go out and they measure prices of these things, and they measure them again every single month. And they measure somewhere around 80,000 items each month in all sorts of different cities and all sorts of different categories. So the price of gasoline is probably in there. And they will go out and measure, say, unleaded gas in lots of different cities. And the people measuring it will try to measure the exact same thing in the exact same location, preferably at the same place, and see if the prices change the following month. So they hire people to do nothing but go out and check prices regularly to see if the prices have changed. So let's give some examples here of the type of things that would go in the basket and things that would not go in the basket. So we'll say here on the left is things not in the basket. And on the right with things that, yes, would be in the basket. So something that would not be in the basket would be something like a Boeing jet, say a 747. Now a 747 is something produced here. It would go in GDP, but it wouldn't go in the basket because that's not something that the consumers normally buy. However, they may buy an airline ticket to Las Vegas. So an airline ticket to Vegas. That's something that might be in there. And if the country made only pizzas and pizza ovens, well, pizzas would be in the basket, something consumers normally buy. But pizza ovens would not be, because pizza ovens are something that producers buy to make more pizzas, not something that consumers buy. So that would not go in the consumer price index. An apartment building. An apartment building made this year would go in GDP, but consumers don't normally buy apartment buildings. However, the rent on apartments would go into the CPI. So rent on departments. Any goods for the military. So tanks, something like that would not go in the basket. Consumers don't normally buy tanks and rocket-propelled grenades. However, they might buy gasoline, so that would be in there, the price of gasoline. And things that are made abroad that people buy would also be included. So cars made in Japan. Cars made in Japan, shipped over here, that people buy, would be included. It doesn't matter where it's made. The only thing that's important is it's something that consumers buy. Wine from Chile coming here. If people buy wine from Chile here, then the amount that they spend on wines would be included in the CPI. And even though it's in Chile, made in Chile, it would still be included in the U.S. Consumer Price Index. Now let's suppose that in the year 2000, Bureau of Labor Statistics goes out and measures this basket of items that they have, or a list of items that they have, that they feel is representative of the average consumer. And in 2007, we'll say that that added up to be $18,000. And they go out and they do it again in 2008. Of course, they're doing it every month in between, but in 2008, same time, 1 year later, that same basket of goods is worth $20,000. And we'll say they do the same thing in 2009, and it is $22,000. Price keeps going up, little inflation. And in 2010, that same basket of goods cost $25,000. And we'll use just one more year, 2011, and we'll say in 2011 that same basket of goods costs $30,000. So this is the value of the basket, or the list of goods in each year's dollars. Now that number really is not important. Not important at all. What is important is that they create an index. And we'll create one. An index. And what we're going to do is make 1 year, we'll say 2008, the base year. And this is arbitrary. I'm just choosing 2008. But the government does the same thing when they go out and create a base year. It's arbitrary. And I'm just going to make this index equal to 1. And say that we're going to revolve everything around that. And we're going to give a number, an index number, to every other year. And that index number will be created from this base year. So, and how much it increases. So prices went up into $22,000 for that basket. It increased $2,000. And so this index, the way it's going to be created is I'm going to take $22,000 and divide it by the base year, 20,000. And I get 1.1. And if I do it the next year, take this $25,000 and divide it by the base year again, 25,000 divided by 20,000 is 1.25. And the final year, 30,000 divided by the base year, 20,000, and I get a number of 1.50. And I'll do it for the year before the base year too, 2007. Take 18,000, divide it by 20,000, and I end up with 0.9. Now what we've created is an index. And this number is important. The absolute value of the number isn't important because it would change on whatever year I picked as the base year. But this is important because with this number I can calculate inflation. For example, what's the inflation rate from 2008 to 2010? Well, the index went from 1 to 1.25, a 25% increase. That means the prices went up 25%. And you can see from 20,000 to 25,000 is 25%. So that's the first value to this index, is we can calculate an inflation rate. The second value to this index is that we can convert nominal prices into real prices as measured in the baseline year. So let's try an example. If we'll say the average price, we'll use a different color. The average price of an economics textbook. We'll put that in this column. The average price of an economics textbook. If the average price of an economics textbook in 2007 was $50, and the average price in 2008 was $75, and 2009 $100. I'm just making these numbers up. And 2010 $125, and 2011 $175. If those were the average prices of an economics textbook in those years, then that column would be the nominal price. The nominal price of the average economics textbook, and it's also measured in current dollars. Current dollars. So those are nominal prices. Those are the prices that people pay for their textbook. Now that number depends on inflation, and what we really want to do is correct or adjust for the inflation in those years to get some sort of real price. So if we want to make a column over here, we'll say the average price of an econ textbook, the average real price say real, the average real price. What we do is we take that $50 and divide it by the index. So 50 divided by 0.09, that is 56. And 75 divided by 1 is 75. 100 divided by 1.1 is 91. 125 divided by 1.25 is 100. And the last one, 175 divided by 1.5 is 117. So now I've got a column of the real price of the average economics textbook in constant dollars. In fact, in constant baseline year dollars, which is 2008. So constant 2008 dollars. Now if I was to plot that information of the average price of an economics textbook and put time down on the horizontal axis and price on the vertical axis, if I plotted this information in nominal dollars, it is going to look something like this. And that is the price price in nominal dollars. Also known as the price in current dollars. And now if I was to plot the economics textbook price in real dollars, measured in 2008 constant dollars, I get something like this. So this is the price in real dollars. That is when we adjust for inflation. And it is in constant year dollars, constant 2008 baseline dollars. And you can see that in the baseline year, nominal dollars equals real dollars. And after 2008, the nominal price is higher than the real price because the real price has to be adjusted down for inflation. Prior to 2008, the real price has to be adjusted up a little bit for inflation so that we can make a comparison to put these books in 2008 dollars. That way we can compare each year to see if the real price is going up or not. We can see the nominal price is going up quite a bit, but in real terms, is it going up? Yeah, actually in real terms, it still seems to be going up because it's going up more than the inflation rate. Now remember, the baseline year is chosen arbitrarily, and I could just as easily have picked 2010 as a year, or if I had data going back to 2000, I could pick that year. But let's say, for example, if I picked 2010 as the baseline year, then I would know that in 2010 the nominal price and the real price would be the same, and the rate of increase of the real price is going to be the same no matter which base year I pick. So if I was to plot that in blue, it would just shift this real price up like this. If I draw it right, it should be just a shift upward. But where it intersects the nominal prices would be in a different place. So this would be the graph if I used a different base year. So if this was constant 2010 dollars. It's in real prices, but you can see the absolute level of those prices isn't important because it depends on what I choose for the base year. The only thing that's really important is how the real prices are changing over time. Now, one thing to be aware of, this throws a little wrench into things, is when the government, Bureau of Labor Statistics, picks a base year, they define that base year to be 100 as the index. Not just one like the way I've done it. They scale everything up. So the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the official CPI for the U.S. government, they will set the base year to be 100 and scale everything up. So in 2007, then it would be 90, and 2009, it wouldn't be 1.1, it'd be 110, 125, and 150. So the thing to keep in mind here, sometimes when you're using the official government numbers, you have to adjust for that. For example, here when we calculated the real price, we just took the nominal price divided by the index, which is 1.1, to get $91. And for that was 2009. And if we were to do the same thing using the government CPI numbers, it'd be 100 divided by 110. And since that's been scaled up by 100, you're dividing by 100, and to make up for it, you have to multiply that by 100 to get the 91. So what will happen is, if you're not aware of that and you don't multiply it by 100, you'll be off by 2 decimal places. So let's go over again what the uses are of the Consumer Price Index. And the first was to calculate the inflation rate. Calculate the inflation rate. And the way we do that is use the CPI in year 2 minus the CPI in year 1 divided by the CPI in year 1. So for example, if we're going to go from 2009 to 2011 and we want to see what the inflation rate is, we'll take the CPI from 2011, which is 1.5, minus the CPI for 2009, which is 1.1, divide it by 1.1, and that number is 0.36, which is 36%. So there's this 36% inflation between 2009 and 2011. And the second big use of the CPI was to convert nominal prices to a base year, to the base year. So we did that by taking the nominal price we'll say in year X, divided by the CPI in year X, and then multiply it by 100, because the government sets their base year at 100, so it's scaled up by 100. So we have to multiply it by 100 or else we'll be off. So for example, we can take the average textbook price, we'll say the average price of a textbook, economics textbook in 2011, and divide by 150, which is the U.S. Consumer Price Index, and multiply that by 100. So in this case, that happened to be 117. And so the third reason here to use the CPI is to be able to convert prices in one year to prices in another year, not just the base year price. So the way this works, we take the price in year 1 and multiply that by the CPI in the second year, we'll call that year 2, divided by the CPI in the first year, year 1, and that will equal the price in year 2. So this is essentially dividing by the CPI to get it into the base year, and then multiplying it by the CPI in the year that you're going to. So it's a ratio of the two CPIs. And if you're not sure which goes on the top and which goes on the bottom, you can try it both ways, and you'll find that one way will probably give you a ridiculous number and the other one will give you a normal number. So let's take an example. In 1912, the Titanic sailed, and the price of a third-class ticket on the Titanic in 1912 was $36.25. So how does that compare with today's prices? how much does that mean in today's dollars? How does that compare with what you could buy in 1912 with $36? How much money would you need to be able to buy the same kind of stuff in 2014? So let's just take a look. In 1912, if I look up the U.S. CPI index, Consumer Price Index, in 1912 it was 9.0. And remember, it's 100 in 1983. So 1983 is the baseline year. And it's equal to 100. So in 1912, it's 9. In March 2014, today's current date, the CPI is 236.293. Now maybe that's the reason why the government sets their price index at 100 for the base year. If they set it to 1, then in 2014 it would be 2.36293. Maybe it would be too many decimal positions to deal with. So if we want to know what that is in 2014 dollars, we take the 3625 and multiply that by 236.293 over 9.0, and that is equal to $952. So in 1912, $36 was worth about the same as almost $1,000 in 2014. Now a first class ticket on the Titanic in 1912 was $4,350. You can bet that's going to be a lot in today's dollars. So if we multiply that by the same ratio, 236.293 over 9, we get $114,208. So that'd be the equivalent of paying $114,000 for a first class cabin to go across the Atlantic on the Titanic. Maybe that's why there were so many wealthy people on the Titanic. Another example is that I heard that during the Depression in 1933, you could buy a loaf of bread for 5 cents. So is that cheap? Or how does that relate to today's dollars? And in real prices, if we were to convert all these to real prices instead of nominal prices and look at it in today's dollars, how does that compare with the price of bread today? Well, let's take a look here. The CPI index, or the Consumer Price Index for 1933 was 13.0. So if we want to convert that to March 2014 dollars, we would have 5 cents times 236.239 divided by 13. That's equal to 91 cents. So that's equivalent of buying bread for 91 cents today. And that might be cheap, but that doesn't sound so cheap. When you say it's a nickel, that sounds really cheap. The nominal price is a nickel. But if we convert that into what that nickel is in 2014, saying you bought some bread for 91 cents really doesn't sound all that incredible. Now there's a number of difficulties that arise when trying to measure the Consumer Price Index and the basket that's in it. One is that there's new items, there's new technology, and new items are they come about that people start to buy, and there's discontinued items. Items come and go. They come and they disappear. So items disappear, and it's hard to measure them when they're not around anymore and no one's buying them. So items disappear. Another problem is that there's quality changes in the items in the basket. So a TV in the 70s is not the same quality as TVs today. Some of the early ones had tubes. They broke down a lot. They were in black and white. When the color came out, it wasn't particularly great. There's no comparison with the TVs today. So somehow the quality changes have to be accounted for. Another big problem is that the basket changes over time. And one of the reasons that the basket changes is because of substitution bias. And substitution bias is that as prices go up on something, people tend to substitute away from it and buy less of it and buy something else instead. And you know that from the law of demand. As the price goes up, then people buy less of it. The quantity demanded goes down. And so that changes the weighting of the basket. If the price of oranges goes way up, people buy less oranges, and so the basket of fixed items, if that doesn't change, then it's not representative of what people buy anymore. It's still measuring the prices of oranges, even though people may not be buying oranges anymore. So another measure of prices is the producer price index, abbreviated as the PPI. And if we look back to the production possibility frontier, and for example, we look at an economy that only makes pizzas and pizza ovens, pizzas are things that consumers buy. Consumers don't go out and buy pizza ovens. People that make pizzas, or producers of pizzas, suppliers of pizzas, are the ones that go out and buy pizza ovens. So in this economy, where we only make two things, and there's no trade with other countries, and there's no government, the pizzas are consumer goods. And would make up the CPI. The pizza ovens are producers' goods, and those would be in the PPI. Economists like to distinguish between the types of goods that consumers buy and the types of goods that producers buy. So these type of goods that go into the CPI are goods that are for consumption. And the type of goods that go into the PPI, the producer goods, these are producer goods. These are the type of goods that are used to make more consumer goods in the future. So there's this trade-off between things that you can consume now, or you can save it and consume more goods later. So these type of producer goods are considered investment, and we use I for investment.